Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our last session for today. A session with a high impact and a lot of interest from your side, as I can tell. Normal marketing slogans are not enough anymore. The world has changed. The marketing of destinations has been taken over by the customer. Instagrammability is an important factor when deciding where to go, right? At least for the young generation. If you don't play along, you're out. So how do the DMOs have to change in order to sustain the challenges of the new market? And how can you make it happen that people talk about you in the social media? A truly up-to-date topic by Christoph Engl, Managing Director of BrandTrust, the leading agency for brand strategy. And he's the author of the first book answering the question of how destinations can build attractiveness and how important this is for brand formation. A real expert who can possibly answer all the questions you may have on marketing in modern times. Christoph Engl, welcome on stage. Hi there.
Hi. Hello.
You see the voting question, and afterwards he will give the speech in German. So if you need a translation device, make sure you get one if you don't understand German, right? Okay, live voting questions. If you don't know it yet, there's a little device attached to your seat. If you want to grab it now, a little white thing with numbers on it. And what I want from you is to know your opinion about how must DMOs change in order to meet the challenges of digitalization. You have 4 options. And when I say please vote now, you vote for one. The first one is DMOs need more money. Second, DMOs need unrestricted freedom of choice. Yeah. Third option, DMOs need different leaders. And fourth, everything has to change. DMOs need to be redesigned. Yes. So please vote now. All right, let's see the results of the international jury. Oh my God, everything has to change and the DMOs need to be redesigned. Well, that's a clear thing. And I think there might be a lot of questions from the audience afterwards. And this is the last session. You might have a chance to talk to him. And I think that would be a nice chance to actually use, wouldn't it? So, stage is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, what are you doing with your logo if nobody sees it anymore? If in the future it's going to be actually spoken because Alexa is in the background? What will you do with your logo and all your beautiful colors if that has to be spoken? What will you do with all that lovely image world you've got, the photographs you've taken with a lot of effort, with star photographers who did that so you can present them on your website, when at the end, the people, your customers, actually take better pictures than the ones you've taken? What are you going to do with your reservation and booking systems that you laboriously built up because you believed you have to have that under the table? Because if the big system today don't even get called Booking.com, but they're called something like Airbnb, and what will you do if destinations who usually have information offices, who's they still look the way you'd rather they didn't, but they actually are the way they look? What do you do with them? And what will you do with your German website type presentation where you have the cities of Germany in alphabetical order? So it's all politically correct. When people actually just get to Google and have twice the information that you could ever have put onto any system, and ultimately, what will you do with your image film that's cost you an astronomical sum? And so much so that you have to keep showing it, even though it's more than obsolete. And by now, people don't watch 5 minutes, a maximum 3 minutes, because people watch that sort of video in just 30 seconds.
was but just a man. With the will to go beyond.
So, a wonderful story that 10 years ago, that big hotel chain would never have told, because there were other customers at the time who would have loved being shown rooms, and customers who are less volatile as those of today, who don't exude so much uncertainty, are far less complex, and above all, not as ambiguous, because what we're dealing with is a new type of customer that's emerging. And you could say that if you look at this all today, it's a new world order that's emerging, a new world order of communication. We as marketing people and marketing experts used to learn that we are the ones who radiate communication. We do the campaigns, we make the tradition, we make the market. Today, we're taught something else. That's the sort of picture that you saw way back when I didn't take photographs. But when I did take photographs 10 years ago, that's what a normal train compartment would have looked like. And after that, on 29 June of the year 2007, so just about 10 years ago, you had this guy appearing who said, with a thing like that, you can do more than telephone. You can also have your music in your coat pocket with you and actually do your presentation. And since then, we've learned that in the year 2018, now we have arrived, after just 10 years, at a place where we know that a train journey looks like this. A queue where people wait looks like this. And at the end, my family on holiday, they look and photograph the sun rising like this. What have we learned in just 10 years? In these 10 years, we've learned a few things that are very good to remember. And we have to think, how will communication actually progress in the next 10 years? But what have we learned? First, we've learned sharing makes data more valuable, not to have the data hidden under the table, but to have them somewhere where you can share them so that other people can use them as well. Another thing we've learned, digitization has enabled even the smallest people to suddenly come to the surface because they're clever at managing it. So we can have a scalability of opportunities that never existed before. What else have we learned? People like things to be simple. The simpler, the better. The more complex, the least successful. And ultimately, what we've learned is we can look into what we consider to be the sort of switching center of a human being, that, namely our brain. This is a photograph of my own brain. You can see there's a lot of space left in it. But my brain works a bit the way yours works in two things. One, it's lazy, and two, it's clever. It loves the things that are simple, and it's clever enough to know that anything that even anticipate complexity is simply shoved to the sides. In other words, the brain only sees what's relevant to you, and the brain makes sure that in this madness of information, we don't get mad, because our intelligence makes sure that you only actually take in what's relevant. In other words, in a digital age where we have scalability, there is a huge wealth of information available, but what it means is that what will be the deciding factor in the future is a decision as to whether or not an item of information is relevant, whether it means something to you. And it's this new world of communication that you have to understand. If you know that it's not technology that drives your behavior, but the other way around, behavior drives technology. And I will tell you, we've always wanted to photograph ourselves in a selfie, but it's only through digitization that it's become possible to do so. And that is why new types of communication are emerging that are very important for us to understand. Because, as I can tell you, speaking as somebody who isn't just working on brands in tourism, people buy desires, not product. What our brain wants is to have a product that allows it to redeem the promise of some desirability. But it can't do that on its own. So my first thesis is this desirability, the yearning which you want. First of all, and that's what brings us into digital assistants, Alexa, Siri, and whatever else there might be, Google. For people, it's simply nicer to ask somebody who actually knows an answer than it is to write various sort of buzzwords into a search engine. And that is the reason why at the moment all these things are really coming up, where you can ask somebody. And that actually, it would often, if you have to type it in, it leads to the wrong question or the wrong type of question, because you build semantic sentences if you can ask it. Words ending, because you need semantic complexes in order to properly answer a question. And that is why these digital assistants that are coming on the market now are actually fulfilling a great need. And the destination brands should also be able to fulfill. In other words, it's not just to provide information, but to build up patterns of meaning, because it tells you what this information is actually worth in a particular context, because that's what a question can elicit much better than if you simply type in a search query. If you look into what these sort of surveys tells us, forecasts say that by 2020, 50% of search queries will be done not on a visual basis, they'll be purely audio. And the second thing is, you will see that 1 in 3, for example, will enjoy it if they can ask digital assistants questions when planning a trip. There's no aversion against this. There's actually a great deal of affinity with that. There's already a third of the people can imagine doing that. So what does that mean? What's the first buzzword for the future when you're thinking of your brand and your destination, region, village, what have you? What matters is, how do you find a new word for you, a very clear word? And the new search engine criterion is voiceability. Can you say that word? Can you be spoken? Can you answer the question? It's less important whether your logo is beautiful or not, or whether you've got lots of debate about the colors, whether the colors are right and so on. All this is nice, you can do it all, but it's not going to be crucial. Not in the world that will be far more influenced through digitization, and as a result of digitization, be able to make the larger content more worthwhile. That means voiceability is going to be important. And that has a lot to do with the fact that when you enter a question into a system, listening is more important than reading a list. People don't want lists with 4,000 results of a search query and sort of 10 enumerations. People want a clear, possibly customized result. And you can guess what will happen, because if it's right, what people tell us will happen, then there won't be 10 answers to a question anymore, just one answer. And that's going to be crucial. If you, with your brand, with your destination, aren't with it, then you will have lost out, even if you're ranked third. When today you think, if I appear on the first page or on the first 10 answers of a search query, that's fine. But voiceability will turn that around quite a bit along the lines of the winner takes it all. So only if you're first. Which means that if you imagine a sort of the search window which will be voice controlled, it means you need very strong terms and semantic behavioral patterns, because otherwise what you can do today and what you are doing is no longer going to work when it's all voiceability. The second thesis, we can look at what's the great desirable that people strive for. If you do lots of selfies, it's nice, and it's also lovely if you want to help people that they appear in the picture nicely. You go somewhere, you can see a couple that photograph themselves, and you go there and say, oh, shall I take a photograph of you? And they say, no, then it won't be a selfie anymore. Selfie in itself has become a value, even if it looks crappy. And even if one face is much bigger than the other, it doesn't really matter, as long as it's a selfie, the value of a selfie as such. And if you want to help these people, they say, no, better don't. Then it'll be better, but it won't be a selfie anymore. It can't automatically be posted as a selfie. We've always wanted to put ourselves into the picture. It's one of the deep yearnings of people, and this desirability is becoming digitally enabled, to put yourself in a picture, not to take over other people's picture, but to be part of what is happening yourself. There were still times when you photographed like this, the way you are just doing it. And there were times when at the mass held by the Pope in the year 2005, it looked like this, and it looked like that in 2013. And then there was the be-all and end-all was not just to keep a moment, but to keep yourself as part of that moment, and that's what it looked like then. And at the very latest, when you understand that with this desirability, with this yearning, you have a new type of world order where you put yourself into the picture, where you stage yourself in it. You can have a situation where destinations are made because somebody has done a selfie of herself in that pool in Singapore and done the stage setting until everybody wants that, saying, I spent a whole day lying there. And then it's suddenly an entertainment value. You can see that this pool, there's nobody swimming there. There's just people trying to stop their hands from going under the water and take a photograph at the same time before they drown to make sure that they can prove I've been there. And when you understand that, you notice that these two here too, looking at the ranking, these two photographs lead the ranking of people who love that sort of picture. This woman got 10.3 million likes, and the second one with that picture got 17.6 million likes. Where you can say, how is that possible? Because people identify with that and they say, I'd love to have a picture of myself like this as well. It's been investigated where people said, let's explore and see what is it that a new generation of people really is about. People between 8 and 33 years old. A large UK insurance company wanted to find out and ask people in that age group, what is your motivation for traveling? Where are you going on holiday? What has to happen on holiday? And they say, give us the 5 best results, the 5 best experiences you had. 3.9% ranked number 5 said opportunities for sightseeing. So the destination where I want to go should sort of be offer me something worth seeing. 8 to 33-year-olds. And a question asked by an insurance company, part of a survey. Now, the next one, 9.4%. Local cuisine. Somebody, when going somewhere, wants to eat about what the natives eat, at least have the opportunity to eat that. That came second. And third here, 22.6%. Personal development as a travel motive. Personal development? In other words, that travel has to somehow benefit me in a special way. And then the next one, second, which actually proves that that study was totally independent and genuine. Second was 24% said whether there was sufficient alcohol available and how expensive, cost availability of alcohol. But 1 in 400,000 people, in other words, said top ranking motivation for them, which nobody would ever have guessed, age group 8 to 33, said how Instagrammable the holiday will be. This became part of the study with this amazing new word, Instagrammability. 40%. That means 400 in 1,000 people say the motivation for their holiday is that the holiday has to be Instagrammable. If it doesn't give me any value in my Instagram channel, then I'm less happy going there. It's got a lot to do with the fact that more and more, before people start eating their food, they actually photograph it, style it. Before they know whether they like it or taste it, they take a picture of it and talk about it. So they share it before ever trying it. That's the McDonald's problem. Because you can't really photograph that, what you end up with on your plate. You can see Instagrammability has got this amazing moment in this beautiful claim of Instagram. Collect moments, not things. And they've really understood that people are interested in keeping hold of the moment, but that they themselves want to be part of that moment. You can see here in Germany, Instagrammability, you see here, ranking first is something which no longer exists, and that's the Berlin Wall. That is the most popular film clip from Germany on Instagram. And you really notice that there's a new sort of order of meaning that has emerged, because it's no longer about working your way through the various sort of sites to be seen in a bucket list, but the idea is to sort of stage yourself, to style yourself in a given moment. And apparently, the people consider the no longer existent Berlin Wall is the one that they have the highest interest in sharing a moment with. And you see that in many pictures. All these images you can see on Instagram every day. If it doesn't look like anything, it can't be good. If it isn't good, at least it looks good. You're dealing with cities where you suddenly see, you look at what the people notice on Instagram, what Instagrammers have pictures of this location. Check how they do it for your own location. See what people say, and then tell you whether you want to show your beautiful pictures anymore, because suddenly the community is pointing out to you what it really is, that the people are of value in your region and what people rate in your region. So outlook into the future, let's say the year 2025. If we sum this up and if we say, what is it that we all have ahead of us here, if we just want to look at this, we would say, well, there are three main aspects of a world, a digital world, as it already is today. Sometimes companies ask me, do we need a digital strategy for ourselves as brand? And the answer is always, there is only a digital strategy, but there is no digital strategy. The only strategy you can have is a strategy that looks at this world as it is, and this world today is a digital one. When you look into what that actually means for our destinations, where you work, well, then we would say there are three main things. Everything becomes so transparent you can't hide anything, and ultimately the only thing that counts is truth. The second thing is either you are sufficiently relevant or big enough, but there is no room for anything in between. Average will be filtered out. And ultimately what it's about is just trust. Who do I genuinely trust? Brands, even in destinations, are hosts of trust. But they have to understand that trust today is no longer just to tell something about yourself, but you've got to be very smart in really taking everything which is a confidence-building measure in the digital world. And we will see. When we say, right, we're looking at this lighthouse, what will happen? Three main areas that we can see in our everyday work, in strategies for brands, what will really matter. The first one of these, if we look into it, what will exist. It's an exciting subject, because what will happen to you as a brand expert or marketing expert for a destination, if you talk to people in your destination about the brand, I say 90% of the people will simply go talking about the logo. In other words, the surface, the colors, or the debates about the colors, the logo, what the logo is supposed to stand for. Very few people will tell you that a brand of a destination will only have a chance to actually be translated into something of value in people's mind if they actually tie in with a product or service. I mean, a country of culinary joy will only become that if you actually taste something which you like. I mean, in France they've started, if people have a bad feeling, if they cook bad, for example, and made it a culinary thing, that sort of thing works for the culinary experience. So the brand, if it remains just a service value, will have lost its only content that will come to the fore. You can take it as read. It's not something which is only related to the here and now, as you may think, where you say, oh, this is online. No, it's not just online. It's also something which becomes very clear when you're looking at the product. You can't recognize a destination if there is something written in the slogan which you don't find reflected in many products, making that a unit, a moment to be experienced. Collect moment, not things. And this experience, this moment of experience, that's what makes a brand and a destination. Digitization actually speeds up that process in an almost incredible way. And why does it do that? Because suddenly this much quoted picture of the iceberg is what you're faced with. Because you know, anybody who's ever seen an iceberg or imagined it will know that above the surface you see something, but that's not really what you should see. Because you only see the surface. But you don't see what caused the whole thing, because you see the effect. And when you go through ITB, your feeling is everything up there. All this is sort of effect management, but the product is far removed from the effect here. But since we're talking about the iceberg, what you really need to know, what turns a destination into a brand, particularly in digitized world, it's to not just look at the effect, but the cause. And the cause that causes the effect is what you need to manage. And the cause becomes more important when you begin to slowly notice that the authority to say what is the meaning of a moment, an image, a picture, a sight, is not something for which you are responsible anymore, because it's your guests, your customers that take over from you. And at the very latest, by then, you've no longer got it made when you can manage the effect and have a wonderful slogan. Because then it's all about, have you got products, services, and infrastructure, anything that lives up to the promise your brand makes, because that's what people notice. And it doesn't help you at all if you can go across ITB now and look at the logos and look at how good you are and how much you have a USP vis-a-vis others, because people see you as a region, a destination, a country, a city, a state. They no longer buys you, quote unquote, because you do well at all of these things, but they do so because you fulfill a yearning, a desirability, and you can translate that in real life experience that people can tell in their real life. And that's what people want more and more. These are the very customers that seem so blurred to us today, because they don't do what we would like them to do, but ultimately, actually, they're our allies when the product and the destination is really well managed.
So managing the brand means managing the product, and the communication is just a consequence of that. If we delve into what people say now, 60% of the content about the destination is considered to be superfluous, because they can have this in better quality, in other ways, from sources they have more trust in. The second thing you'll see from the studies that are being published is that 84% of consumers expect content which are entertaining, but also tell a story. So all those things that you believe you can sweep under the counter about what local people do and say, this is beginning to swim up to the top, up to the surface. You can't simply buy in people to tell a story about how good it is. No, people want to have a sense that it's authentic, this story, and whether Jürgen Klopp really does drive an Opel, as he makes so much so many commercials for them. People don't trust what they see now. The idea that Jürgen Klopp drives an Opel? Why believe it? And then it doesn't work anymore as advertising. And then if you look further and say, at least in the United States, 60% of travelers, this is a new study, say that having good things on offer are the things that tempt them. But, of course, the question is, if you look to see who does this well, who's got this message, these things that are already happening in the United States, that began in the United States, like Airbnb, now this is a company that promises you this. And it's no longer just about the accommodation and a photo of the inside and how big the room is and what it costs. And it's not just about these banal things. It's about, do you want to be part of this story? And it's carefully addressed here. And that leads to this. The most Instagrammable place is Australia. Then you can see the most Instagrammable hotels. It's a catalogue, has nothing to do with 5 stars or 3 stars. No one's going to tell you how many stars the thing's got. It's the most Instagrammable hotel. Or this is on the web as well. The Instagrammability factor alone. 12 Airbnb destinations that you only have to visit because they offer the most Instagrammability. And a completely new category here for destination branding. Or here, of course, you can see 10 luxury hotels in Mallorca, the most romantic hotels, the best hotels. But, of course, you also have the most Instagrammable hotels in Mallorca. These are new categories. Salzburg has done this too. It has sites, and it's turned them into photo spots. So it's not about the sites. It's about where people can best style themselves. There's a new book, German Romers. It says breathtaking places, things that normally you wouldn't find on a list of sites, but all of a sudden they pop up at the top because they potentially offer so much significance to people who are looking for exactly that. So the conclusion, what this is about in the future is placing things in context. Context is the new success factor, not the information. In which context is this product going to be relevant to you? When might you want to buy it? When will it trigger a desire in you? When is the moment that you need to recognize that you want this context? So the second success driver in coming years, which will drive brands forward and make them more successful, relates to the fact that things that are distinctive, things that distinguish you from everything else make you number one. Not being able to do things better. Andreas Reckwitz wrote this fantastic book about the Society of Singularities. It's not an easy book to read, but it has an awful lot of power for a cultural philosopher. He analyzes society and he says, things that are special are the trump card. Things that are unique win the prizes. Anything that's universal or standardized lacks charm. So conformity becomes suspicious. And you can see what effect this has if a society has the opportunity to show itself in simpler ways. 57% expect personalized information, and they are prepared, quite consciously, to provide their personal data if it means they will get something tailor-made back. People are quite willing to hand over this personal information as long as they get this tailor-made response. So you see, personal details are exchanged for personalized information. If I think I'm going to get something back which reduces the complexity for me, makes my life simpler, that demonstrates that someone understands my behavior and can interpret me the way I need them to. Not so good for data protection, but definitely there are opportunities there. And you'll see here, with digital assistants, the consumer expects the answer to be relevant. They have the feeling that digital assistants can be very relevant because they can be highly precise. I can formulate my question very precisely, and you'll see that the millennials, a lot of you are out here in this room, over a third of the millennials prefer personalized AI recommendations. And this personalization is going to be a really big driver. Everything that is invested into the singularity of a society which is fragmenting into thousands of different personal motives, this is what will pay off. Mountain bike holiday, for example, whatever. And then you get a list which is now over 4 million results in 0.71 seconds. That's not going to really help anybody who has to make a choice. And if yesterday you were listening to the founder of Airbnb, who made it quite clear that Airbnb segments its own offering into 300 different categories so that smart assistants can come up with the best possible combination. And if you look to see what's happening there and what we can expect in the future, you'll see that there are companies that know very well how to visualize this segmented world with all its singularities. There are target groups that can be properly managed with the right budgets. People have very clear ideas of what they would like. And Airbnb has understood that. Back from home, back from a structure into the experience of travel, where the structure plays a part, context, connections, patterns of meaning, no longer separate solutions. The third point is the slots that are offered for searches require certain language, but concepts don't have to be a single word. They can be patterns of meaning. There are lots of companies present here working very hard to make sure that these patterns of meaning can be reflected in their databases, so that if in future artificial intelligence can very quickly draw on them. You can see examples already. These companies, for example, Urlaubspiraten, the holiday pirates, whatever, they say, how do you combine these things? EasyJet, for example, Alexa, book me a flight. These are all patterns of meaning. Book me a room with red roof. They don't want to take any risks. They want a room with red roof. And then the engine can come up with the perfect solution. Or rent me a sixth car. All of this can now be reflected in the database in such a way that it doesn't appear as a concept, but as a pattern of behavior. It can be reflected in that way, and then the intelligent assistants, the smart assistants, can draw on it. Here, for example, LA, family events today, or Pittsburgh, tell me, Alexa, what are the 5 main sites in Pittsburgh? And these are the kind of questions that can be saved in the system, and the answers can quickly be found in the system too. Or the North, countries in the Nordics like Sweden, they're building a completely new world.
Roughly 100 million acres of land, that is all mine. Well, I share it with 10 million other people, but I'm speaking on their behalf, so to speak. Welcome to the relaxation area. It's very spacious, to say the least. And check this out. 100,000 tempered infinity pools. This is my terrace. Custom design with panoramic floor-to-ceiling views in every direction. And this is my bathroom. Swedish minimalistic style, completely outfitted with all necessities. Last but not least, here is where the magic happens. And here. And here. And sometimes here. You see, in Sweden, we have this thing called freedom to roam. It's a right protected by the law that allows me to sleep and eat and walk pretty much wherever I want. Now you can too, because we listed the entire country on Airbnb. Welcome to my home. Welcome to Sweden.
Well integrated, new world, understood a long way from I'll show you what there is, but it's telling a story, it's placed in a context, the narrative is good, easy to identify with what you would experience there. So just to wind up, the first time I latched onto this theme, a long time before the digitalization started for me, many years ago, when I came from South Tyrol as a marketing boss, and I began this marketing campaign. And I saw what these people were doing, and I thought, this is really impressive. How do they do that? Won an awful lot of prizes. I loved it, so I thought, okay, what do I want? What would I give to be there? And I got there. I got to the place, and I thought, well, where's the problem? If I'd asked the people from Indian tourism what their problem was, they'd have said, unfortunately, we don't have enough money for the advertising campaign. But no one would have said, we don't have enough money to clean the water up. So you could see this is the world as it was. You could, without being punished for it, show these things, run campaigns, win prizes, and you didn't have to reckon with customers coming along and making the truth transparent. So I learned from that picture that if we are DMOs today, we call them destination management organizations, and really destination marketing organization now in a digitalized world this is the next chapter. We're not marketing organizations anymore. We are management organizations. The question is, how do I clean up the water? Not how do I launch the campaign? That's the challenge for the next few years. What can I do so that triggers, products, infrastructure can be managed in such a way that people will integrate them into their own communication? Lovely idea from Amsterdam, outside the Parliament building, to show this infrastructure where you can take a picture of yourself. Lovely idea. Moon Bar in Bangkok, if you can specialize in something like that so that when you're there, people can take those pictures. Wonderful if you've understood that what we cook today doesn't just taste good, it has to look good. And wonderful if you know that with all these digital opportunities we have now, people are finding out the last details. And in a hotel, it's usually the worst room that gets published more often. The best pictures come from you, the worst come from your customers. So if we summarize all that, the three big movements that we're seeing now, the three big shifts, the new world of communication that is driven by Siri, Cortana, and Hi Google, you have to say marketing. The toll bell is ringing now for marketing. Its hour has struck. We have to think about management now, especially as destinations. We're thinking about the product, what we can offer, what we can offer. The communication is done by others. If you've got the information, that's great, but what you really need is patterns of meaning. What does this mean? In what context? What is the significance? Storytelling isn't enough. You have to think about how this information can be transformed into meaning in broader contexts. And how will this relate to the people with their desires? And share and like has become recommend and selected for you. The big provocation is this. If you think this through to the end, then as a destination, you have to separate the brand from the communication. But what we need is you have to generate the triggers for people to undertake that communication for you. They'll do it for free, they'll do it happily, and they'll do it in multitudes if you give them reasons to do it. And I think that's your task for the future. Thank you very much.
Well, then thank you very much. As this was the last session of today, so maybe if you have a couple of minutes, you can come up and ask him questions if you have any. If not, then thank you for joining the Destination Day number 2 and have a good trip back. Thank you for coming.
Nochmal zurück auf das.